This video is brought to you by Straight Goods News, Canada's alternative online news source. Visit straightgoods.ca.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. We've just been handed a copy of the legislation, and really at an initial reaction, we haven't had much time to review and assess the situation, but our initial reaction is it appears to be somewhat standard legislation, arbitration. It does not seem to contain some of the provisions of previous legislation that had been tabled this past year. We're going to have a review. We're going to sit down with our negotiating team and our legal counsel. We're going to assess the entire situation and most likely have more to say later. But that's our initial assessment, and we can answer any questions you have.
Aside from not wanting the legislation at all, are there things in there that you're happy that you don't see, that are not there when you mention previous legislations that we've seen recently? Well,
this legislation doesn't seem to favor one party or the other, which was the criticism of some of the features in previous legislation. That right now that doesn't appear to be in there, and that's a criticism that has taken place on other legislation. And so our initial assessment is it doesn't contain that provision and that clause. And so in my opinion, what this does is it places significant emphasis on who the arbitrator is, who's selected, do they have experience and knowledge in the federal sector, in pension issues, in rail issues, and really I think the next focus is going to be on who the arbitrator is.
Monsieur Brunet, en français.
Yesterday, we had a federal government mediator. That federal government mediator proposed to both parties an arbitration structure. Both parties walked away from that. Today, you now have an arbiter who's going to be named, and the only difference is there won't be any walking away. This arbiter is going to have final say and binding powers. So, did you not bring this on, both of you, by walking away from the recommendations yesterday?
Well, I don't think we brought anything on. I think CPR brought it on. They're the ones that wanted to hide behind the government from the beginning. I mean, if CP had been serious about bargaining with us, we'd likely still be bargaining. And we'd probably, if they wanted to adopt a more reasonable approach to the issues, we'd probably get a deal. I think that CP is going to have to reassess their strategy when they serve notice of dispute. They're going to have to reassess what they do in collective bargaining. Because if they're going to continue to rely on the government, I'm hopeful someday that they're going to be disappointed. Well, it's just not that easy. It's not, you just don't, when you shut down a national rail line, you just don't start it up on a moment's notice. I think there's some significant planning that's going to have to take place. We have some ideas and suggestions to CP about how we would think resumption of services should take place. We have 5,000 people that have to get back to work and replace themselves into the workplace.
So you would obey the back to work legislation?
I don't think the Teamsters are here to disobey legislation. I can't imagine if this bill passes that there's going to be any illegal activity by the Teamsters organization.
You hope this sort of restarts or reconfigures CP's bargaining strategy. This bill, you're a bit optimistic. You're saying you hope it gets them to rethink their bargaining strategy. Does that go far enough in assuaging your concerns about the whole process, the fact that you're facing back-to-work legislation? In other words, does that make it any better?
My comments about CP rethinking their strategy is more to explain my dissatisfaction with the way they've behaved since the very beginning of bargaining. Clearly, in our view, there was bad faith. That's been our position for some time now, and we believe that there's evidence, and we'll let that work its way through the system. I think they have to pay attention to the fact that they've aroused the interest of the 5,000 of their employees. And those 5,000 employees are very, very serious about retaining their pension and their rights. And I think that CP had better reassess their relationship with their employees very seriously in the future.
You make it sound like the choice of an arbiter or an arbitrator is going to be very important. We saw that in post-Canada Post Canada at one point. I think they're still before the courts because an arbitrator was not bilingual, I believe, Canada Post. Would there be a possibility of challenging the choice of an arbitrator?
Well, I'd like to think instead of in a reactionary sense that we'd be proactive and be part, voice our opinion and say how important it is for us to have someone who's a senior arbitrator who has federal experience in the rail industry perhaps, and particularly the issues of pension. It would be really bad for everybody if we were to get an arbitrator who is, say for example, on the eve of retirement, that has no vested interest in the issues as they carry forward. I mean, for us, if someone's going to decide the dispute, and the dispute is so significant for us, we have a vested interest in having the right person appointed. And yeah, we would certainly assess whoever is appointed. May have to make our decision at that time.
Management team that's now been shaken up, the board of directors has changed hands. And the new management team coming in has a great focus on reducing the operating margin and increasing profit margins. Where do you think that's going to head? Is going to be headed as far as you're concerned with labor management relations?
Well, the change in the board of directors, I don't know or of any direct effect on collective bargaining, although I have my suspicions that there's some lingering life left in that dispute. I would think that whatever management team is in place in the near future, if there's a change, I would hope that they would not adopt the same approach as what we've witnessed in the last 6 or 8 months, and that they'd be serious about the issues. And I'm looking forward to getting back at the table and dealing with the real issues and protecting our pensions. I think that in retrospect, if the past board of directors was so adamant that they were going to extract value out of our pension for the shareholders, and if the new board adopts that same strategy, then I think you can expect the same results.